Kate Morrison walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime and felt the weight of every alien eye upon her. The chamber stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into shadows, and the walls curved in a perfect circle around hundreds of seats filled with representatives from across the galaxy. She was the only human in a room full of creatures that considered her species nothing, more than lucky animals who had stumbled into space travel by accident. Chairman Vextar dominated the center platform with his massive reptilian form towering over everyone else in the room. His scales were dark green and black, and his yellow eyes held nothing but contempt when they looked at Kate. Next, to him sat Counselor Zephyra of the Zenthran Collective, and her crystalline features reflected the chamber lights in sharp angles that seemed to cut through the air itself. These two species had controlled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, and they had crushed every young civilization that dared to challenge their authority. Kate took her place at the small podium reserved for humanity and activated the translation device that would carry her words to every species in the chamber. She had been Earth's ambassador for 5 years and had watched the Council grow more aggressive toward human colonies with each passing month. Today they would make their final demand, and they expected her to surrender without a fight. Chairman Vextar stood, and his voice boomed across the chamber without any need for amplification. The humans will surrender all mining rights to the outer colonies within 72 standard hours, or face complete economic isolation from galactic trade. Your species has exploited resources that belong to the established members of this council, and your expansion ends now. The Vorthok Empire and our allies have been more than patient with your primitive civilization, but our patience has limits. Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber as dozens of alien species nodded their agreement. Kate had expected this moment for months and had prepared her response carefully. On Earth, Admiral Jack Harrison was watching this transmission from the deep underground complex beneath the Colorado Mountains, and he exchanged glances with General Lisa Carter and Colonel Ryan Blake. They all knew what was coming next, and they had been preparing for this day since humanity first reached the stars. Counselor Zephyra's voice was like music made of broken glass when she spoke, and her words carried the cold certainty of mathematical calculation. The Zenthran Collective has analyzed human technological capabilities and found them insufficient for independent survival in galactic civilization. Your species requires guidance from your betters, and the resources you claim are needed by civilizations far more advanced than your own. Submit to our authority, and your people will be allowed to continue their existence under proper supervision. Kate listened to the translation and felt a cold smile touch her lips. These aliens had spent decades studying humanity, and had concluded that humans were weak and backward and desperate for acceptance into their galactic community. They had watched human ships travel slowly between systems, and had seen human colonies struggle to establish themselves on harsh worlds. What they had not seen was the truth that lay hidden beneath the surface of human civilization. The chamber fell silent as Kate activated her own speaking device, and her voice carried clearly to every corner of the vast room. The government of Earth has carefully considered the Council's generous proposal, and we must respectfully decline your offer. Effective immediately, all human vessels and personnel are withdrawing from Council space, and we will be terminating all existing trade agreements. We wish the Council well in their future endeavors, and hope that our paths may cross again under more favorable circumstances. The silence that followed Kate's words lasted for exactly 3 seconds before the chamber erupted in what could only be described as alien laughter. Chairman Vextar's massive head tilted back, and his throat produced a sound like grinding stone that served as Vorthak amusement. Counselor Zephyra's crystalline features shifted into patterns that indicated her species' version of humor. Representatives from dozens of other civilizations made their own sounds of mockery and disbelief. These foolish mammals believe they can survive without our protection and guidance. Chairman Vextar's voice carried across the chamber, and his yellow eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. Within 1 standard month, they will return to beg for our mercy, and we will be far less generous in our terms. The Vorthak Empire has crushed 47 civilizations that dared to defy the Council, and humanity will simply be number 48 on that list. Kate gathered her materials and walked toward the chamber. Exit. While alien voices continued to mock humanity's decision behind her, she knew that every species in that room believed they had just witnessed the political suicide of an entire civilization. They had no idea that humanity had been planning for this moment since the day they first learned of the Council's existence and that every human ship in space was far more than it appeared to be. Back on Earth, Admiral Harrison closed the transmission link and turned to face the assembled officers in the command center. Phase 1 is complete, and the Council has reacted exactly as we predicted. General Carter, activate all sleeper protocols and begin withdrawing our people from Council space. Colonel Blake, signal all ship commanders that Operation Prometheus is now active. The waiting is over and it is time to show the galaxy what humanity has really been building out here in the dark. Captain Alex Torres gripped the controls of the freighter New Horizon as Vorthak battlecruisers moved to intercept his ship near the Kepler system. The medical supplies in his cargo hold were desperately needed by the human colony on Kepler 442b, but the Council had established a complete blockade around all human settlements. 3 massive alien warships approached from different angles, and their weapon systems were already charging for what they expected to be a simple capture operation. The lead Vorthak cruiser opened a communication channel, and Commander Krell's reptilian face appeared on Torres's main screen. Human vessel, you are violating Council blockade protocols and must submit to immediate boarding and seizure. Power down your engines and prepare to be taken into custody for violations of galactic law. Your primitive cargo ship cannot hope to outrun or outfight the warships of the Vorthak Empire, so surrender now and save yourself unnecessary suffering. Torres smiled and activated his own communication system, while his fingers moved across controls that the Vorthaks had never seen before. Commander Krell, I appreciate your concern for my well-being, but I am afraid that I must decline your generous offer. The people on Kepler 442b need these medical supplies, and I intend to deliver them as promised. I suggest that you and your ships move aside before someone gets hurt. Commander Krell's laughter sounded like rocks grinding together, and his yellow eyes gleamed with anticipation. Your pathetic cargo vessel against 3 battlecruisers of the Imperial fleet. This will be amusing to watch, human. Open fire and disable their engines, but leave the ship intact so we can examine their primitive technology. The 3 Vorthak ships moved into attack formation, and their energy weapons began charging with the distinctive whine that had terrorized dozens of younger civilizations. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations to come. The New Horizon suddenly unfolded like a mechanical flower as hidden armor plating slid away to reveal weapon batteries that should not have been able to fit inside a ship of that size. Energy beams lanced out from the human freighter with precision that defied everything the Vorthaks knew about human technology in the first battlecruisers. Shields collapsed in seconds under the sustained assault. Commander Krell stared at his tactical display in disbelief as his flagship's hull began to buckle under weapons fire that was cutting through their best defensive systems like they were made of paper. Impossible, the humans do not possess this level of technology. All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel and destroy it immediately. But even as he gave the order, Krell could see that his other 2 cruisers were already taking heavy damage from the freighter's impossible firepower. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. When the weapons fire finally stopped, 3 Vorthak battlecruisers drifted powerless in space with their hulls cracked open and their crews either dead or floating in escape pods. The New Horizon hung motionless among the wreckage without so much as a scratch on her hull, and Torres opened a communication channel to the surviving Vorthak officers who were staring at him in shock and terror. I warned you that someone might get hurt, but you chose not to listen. Torres's voice was calm and professional as he addressed the aliens who had tried to destroy his ship moments before. Your escape pods have enough life support to reach the nearest council station, and I suggest you use this time to reconsider your approach to dealing with human vessels. Tell your superiors that this was a demonstration of restraint and that future encounters may not end so favorably for council forces. Similar scenes were playing out across 12 different star systems as human merchant ships and passenger transports revealed their true nature to shocked council enforcement fleets. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the engagements from Earth's Strategic Command Center and watched with satisfaction as decades of careful preparation finally paid off. Every human vessel in space had been designed as a Trojan horse, and every peaceful colony was actually a forward military base. The Altair system saw a human passenger liner destroy 2 Zenthran destroyers while protecting a convoy of refugee ships. In the Proxima system, a human research vessel eliminated an entire Catherian patrol squadron that had been harassing civilian transports. Near Vega, a human mining barge fought off 4 Council corvettes while continuing to extract resources from an asteroid field as if nothing unusual was happening. Commander Sarah Bennett stood on the bridge of what the Council had classified as a civilian transport vessel and watched her tactical display show the wreckage of 6 alien warships that had tried to intercept her cargo of agricultural equipment. She activated the ship's communication array and broadcast on all Council military frequencies while her crew secured their hidden weapons and restored the ship's innocent appearance. This is Commander Sarah Bennett of the Earth Defense Force broadcasting to all Council military units currently operating in human space. Your blockade has been terminated, and your enforcement fleets have been neutralized. Any further aggressive action against human vessels or colonies will be met with escalating responses. We have demonstrated our restraint today, but that restraint has limits. You have been warned. The message reached Council headquarters on Nexus Prime within hours, and Chairman Vextar stared at the tactical reports in growing fury. Over 200 Council warships had been destroyed or disabled by vessels that were supposed to be defenseless civilian craft. The humans had not simply hidden a few weapons on their ships, they had been operating an entire military fleet, disguised as merchants and colonists. The scope of the deception was staggering, and the implications were terrifying. Admiral Korvex commanded the largest military fleet in Vorthak history, as 200 warships moved toward the Sol system in perfect formation. Chairman Vextar had authorized the complete destruction of human civilization, and Korvex intended to make this campaign a lesson that would echo across the galaxy for 1,000 years. No species had ever dared to humiliate the Council with the kind of military deception that humanity had revealed, and such arrogance demanded the ultimate punishment. The Vorthak fleet consisted of 50 heavy battlecruisers, backed by 100 destroyers and 50 support vessels, carrying the most advanced weapons, technology that the Council could produce. Korvex had personally overseen the loading of quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons capable of cracking planetary surfaces, and he planned to use every single weapon in his arsenal to reduce Earth to a lifeless rock floating in space. What Admiral Korvex found waiting for him at the edge of the Sol system would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his life. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear as massive shapes emerged from hidden dimensions that should not have been accessible with any known technology. Fleet Admiral Grace Mitchell commanded not hundreds, but thousands of vessels that materialized from asteroid fields and gas giant moons and pocket universes that existed parallel to normal space. The human fleet defied everything the galaxy knew about shipbuilding and space combat. Vessels that appeared to be the size of destroyers carried firepower that should have required dreadnought-class hulls. Ships phased in and out of normal space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. Fighters moved through three-dimensional combat maneuvers that violated basic principles of inertia and momentum while maintaining perfect formation control. Admiral Korvex opened a communication channel to the human fleet and tried to maintain his composure while staring at tactical readings that his instruments insisted were impossible. I am Admiral Korvex of the Vorthak Imperial Navy, and I demand that you surrender immediately. The Council has authorized the complete pacification of this system, and resistance will only increase the suffering of your people. You are outnumbered and outgunned, and further defiance is futile. Fleet Admiral Mitchell's response came from the bridge of a ship that appeared to be built from materials that shifted and flowed like liquid metal, while maintaining perfect structural integrity. Admiral Korvex, you have brought instruments of war into the Sol system without permission, and your actions constitute an act of aggression against Earth and her colonies. I am authorized to offer you one opportunity to withdraw your forces and return to Council space. This offer will not be repeated. Korvex's response was to order his entire fleet to open fire with every weapon they possessed. 200 Vorthak warships unleashed enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds in space filled with energy beams and quantum torpedoes and plasma charges that should have overwhelmed any defensive system ever created. For exactly 3 seconds, it appeared that the Council fleet might achieve a quick victory through sheer destructive force. Then the human ships began to move, and the laws of warfare changed forever. Captain Derek Sullivan piloted a fighter craft that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and his squadron tore through Vorthak capital ships like they were made of paper. Energy weapons that should have been impossible to mount on small vessels punched through shields and armor that had protected the Council fleets for centuries, the human ships moved with coordination that suggested they were sharing a single consciousness while maintaining individual tactical flexibility that allowed them to adapt to changing battlefield conditions faster than any organic crew should have been able to process information. Their weapons fire anticipated Vorthak defensive maneuvers before those maneuvers were actually executed, and their targeting systems found weak points in alien hulls that the designers had never known existed. Admiral Korvax watched his flagship's tactical display show impossible readings as his fleet was systematically dismantled around him. Human vessels that had been destroyed reformed themselves from scattered particles. Weapons that missed their targets curved through space to strike different ships from unexpected angles. Fighters that should have been vulnerable to point defense systems moved through defensive fire without taking a single hit as his command ship began to break apart under sustained fire from weapons that should not have been able to exist. Korvax finally understood the horrible truth about humanity. These creatures had not stumbled into space travel through luck or accident. They had been waiting out here in the dark, building fleets and developing technologies while pretending to be primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. The Council had not discovered humanity. Humanity had allowed themselves to be discovered. With his dying breath, Admiral Korvax managed to send one final transmission back to Council headquarters on Nexus Prime. His words would be studied and analyzed for generations as various species tried to understand what humanity really was and where they had truly come from. They are not like us. They are not like anyone we have ever encountered. Emperor, preserve us all, because we have awakened something that should have been left sleeping in the void. The Battle of Sol lasted exactly 18 minutes from first shot to final surrender. When the weapons fire finally stopped, 200 Vorthak warships had been reduced to drifting wreckage and scattered escape pods. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed, and Fleet Admiral Mitchell opened a communication channel to broadcast across the entire galaxy. The Sol system is under the protection of the Earth Defense Force, and any future acts of aggression will be met with overwhelming response. News of the Sol system massacre spread through the galaxy faster than any species had thought possible, and panic began to grip civilizations that had considered themselves safe under Council protection. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Parker led her strike team through the corridors of the Zenthran research facility on Proxima 7 while automated defenses that should have been impregnable crumbled before human technology that seemed to exist outside the normal laws of physics. The Zenthran facility had been used for decades to study captured specimens from younger civilizations, and Parker's mission was to liberate the prisoners while acquiring every piece of stolen technology and research data. Her team moved through the complex like ghosts passing through walls, and the crystalline guards found their weapons useless against armor that shifted between dimensions to avoid incoming fire. In the deepest levels of the facility, Parker discovered hundreds of beings from dozens of species that the Council had supposedly welcomed into galactic civilization. The Altarians, who had been reduced to slavery, the Deltaran engineers whose entire species had been forced to work in Council shipyards, the Corvani healers whose medical knowledge had been stolen and used to develop biological weapons. All of them imprisoned and studied like laboratory animals. Parker opened the containment cells and watched as beings who had not seen freedom in years stumbled into the corridors with disbelief in their eyes. "We are here to take you home, and you will never be prisoners again. But first, we need your help to ensure that no other species suffers the same fate. Will you stand with us against the Council that has oppressed you for so long?" On Nexus Prime, Chairman Vextar watched his empire crumble as species after species withdrew from the Council alliance. The Catherian Confederation had been secretly negotiating with humanity through Ambassador Kate Morrison, who had remained on the capital world to coordinate diplomatic efforts. Confederation leader Thys revealed that many civilizations had been waiting decades for someone powerful enough to challenge the Vorthak and Zenthran hegemony. The truth about Council civilization began to emerge as former member species shared their experiences of oppression and exploitation. The beautiful worlds that served as Council showcases were built on the backs of enslaved populations. The advanced technologies that made Council ships superior were stolen from conquered civilizations. The peace and prosperity that the Council claimed to provide existed only for the ruling species while everyone else lived in fear. Dr. Peter Lane stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council and activated a holographic display that showed the scope of humanity's true capabilities. For 50 years, we have been conducting advanced research in parallel dimensions and building fleets in hidden space. We have studied the ruins of 12 different extinct civilizations that the Council never knew existed, and we have learned from their mistakes. The holographic display showed vast shipyards hidden in pocket dimensions and research facilities that existed outside normal spacetime, advanced technologies that made Council science look primitive by comparison, weapon systems that could reshape matter at the atomic level, defensive systems that operated in 11 dimensions simultaneously, transportation networks that connected every human world through space that existed parallel to the galaxy itself. Chairman Vextar stared at the display and felt something he had never experienced before in his long life. Pure terror gripped his heart as he realized that humanity had been studying the Council for decades while pretending to be primitive newcomers. Every human diplomat had been a spy. Every human merchant had been gathering intelligence. Every human colony had been a forward observation post. As human task forces systematically dismantled Council military assets across 17 star systems, Vextar made a desperate decision that would seal his fate. He authorized the activation of the Cleansing Protocol, a weapon system that had been developed in secret to render entire worlds uninhabitable. His target was Earth itself, because if the Council could not rule humanity, then no one would be allowed to benefit from human knowledge. The Cleansing Protocol had been the Council's ultimate weapon for over 2 centuries, and it had been used to destroy civilizations that became too dangerous to control. The weapon worked by destabilizing planetary cores and creating chain reactions that would spread through entire star systems. It was designed to leave no survivors and no evidence that advanced civilizations had ever existed in the targeted regions. Vextar activated the weapon from his personal command center and watched the targeting system lock onto Earth's coordinates. The power readings climbed toward activation levels, and he felt satisfaction flow through his consciousness. If these humans wanted to play at being apex predators, then they would learn that the Vorthak Empire had been perfecting the art of extinction for longer than their species had existed. The weapon charged and prepared to fire. Then every system in the Cleansing Protocol facility shut down simultaneously, and Admiral Jack Harrison's face appeared on every screen in the command center. Chairman Vextar, I am disappointed that you would attempt to use such a crude weapon against Earth. Did you really think that we would allow you to build planet killers without ensuring that we could control them? The Cleansing Protocol has been under human oversight since the day it was first activated. Admiral Harrison smiled as he watched Chairman Vextar stare in horror at the screens that showed humanity's complete control over the Cleansing Protocol. The weapon system that had been the Council's ultimate tool of terror was now pointed at the Vorthak homeworld itself, and every alien leader in the galaxy could see the power readings climbing toward activation levels. But Harrison had no intention of becoming the monster that the Council had been for so many centuries. Instead of destroying the Vorthak homeworld, Harrison used the weapon to disable their planetary defense systems and communication networks while leaving the population completely unharmed. This is what restraint looks like, Chairman Vextar. We could have ended your civilization with the press of a button, but we choose to show mercy. Perhaps your species will learn something from this demonstration and find a better path forward than the one you have been following. With the Council's military power broken and their ultimate weapon under human control, the old galactic order collapsed within days. Species that had been oppressed for generations suddenly found their voices and demanded representation in whatever government would replace the failed Council system. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood before a very different assembly than the one that had tried to intimidate humanity just weeks before. The new Galactic Assembly met in a chamber that had been redesigned to give equal space and equal voice to every species regardless of their technological development or military power. The Altarian refugees who had been enslaved for decades now sat beside their former captors as equals. The Deltaran colonies that had been stripped of resources for centuries were now free to negotiate their own trade agreements and determine their own futures. General Lisa Carter had been appointed as humanity's first galactic defense coordinator, and she explained the new reality to the assembled representatives with patience and clarity. Humanity will not rule the galaxy because that would simply replace one form of tyranny with another. Instead, we will protect the galaxy and ensure that no single species can ever again dominate or oppress others. Our fleets will guard against external threats, and our technology will be shared with those who prove themselves worthy of trust. The former council species found themselves reduced to equal participants in a system that valued cooperation over conquest and knowledge over military might. Chairman Vextar had been removed from power by his own people, who were desperate to avoid further conflict with humanity. Counselor Zephyra discovered that her crystalline perfection meant nothing in a galaxy where diversity was celebrated instead of eliminated. Human technology began to flow to civilizations that had been denied advancement for centuries. Medical knowledge that could cure diseases that had plagued entire species, agricultural techniques that could turn barren worlds into gardens, energy systems that could power civilizations without depleting natural resources, transportation networks that could connect distant worlds without the risk of military conquest. But with these gifts came responsibilities, and humanity made it clear that advanced technology would only be shared with species that demonstrated their commitment to peace and cooperation. Civilizations that attempted to use human gifts for conquest or oppression found themselves cut off from further assistance and facing the possibility of intervention by Earth defense forces. As the months passed, the galaxy began to transform in ways that no one had thought possible. Trade routes that had been controlled by council monopolies were open to all species. Scientific research that had been hoarded by the ruling classes was shared freely among civilizations eager to learn and grow. Art and culture flourished as beings who had lived in fear for generations finally felt safe to express themselves. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in her laboratory on Earth and finally felt comfortable revealing humanity's greatest secret to the galaxy. The assembled representatives listened in stunned silence as she explained that humans were not originally from Earth. They were survivors of a great war that had consumed another galaxy, and they had spent millennia preparing for the day when they would need to fight again. Humanity had chosen Earth not as a new home, but as a fortress from which to guard against the darkness they had once fled. They had watched civilizations rise and fall while building their strength and waiting for the moment when they would be needed. The Council's oppression had simply accelerated a timeline that had been planned for thousands of years. Now, with the Milky Way united under principles of freedom and equality, humanity could finally rest, knowing they had built something worth protecting. Their hidden fleets maintained silent vigil at the galaxy's edge, watching for threats that might emerge from the void between stars. Their scientists worked alongside alien researchers to develop technologies that would benefit all civilizations. The final scene played out on New Geneva Station, which had become the first truly integrated galactic outpost where beings from dozens of different species worked and lived together in harmony. Children who would have been enemies under the old council system now played together in the station's gardens, while their parents watched with hope for a future that none of them could have imagined just months before. In the distance, Earth's guardian fleets continued their eternal watch, ensuring that the galaxy's youngest species would never again face the choice between submission and annihilation. Humanity had learned from the mistakes of their lost galaxy, and they were determined that this time the forces of freedom and cooperation would prevail over tyranny and fear. The age of the Council was over, and the age of the Alliance had begun.